What's up, guys? Welcome to today's video. Hope you guys are all having a great weekend so far. It's currently Thursday afternoon, 1:45 for me. I'm about to have my afternoon coffee, but I wanted to knock out this video for you guys real quick. I got this request from an Instagram message the other day, and I was like, you know what? I haven't really gone super in depth on the entire process of buying my first property. So I'm going to take you guys through that entire process with basically my initial search, how many houses I looked at, what I was looking for, the entire closing process, kind of the offer that we wrote for it, and then give you guys some updates on the current situation with that house, and then also just give you guys some pictures and like a little visual walkthrough of what that house looked like before I bought it, what it looks like now, and all that kind of stuff. So sit back, relax, enjoy the video. I hope this video is able to help you guys out. For those of you guys that are interested in or either in the process of buying your first house or interested in potentially purchasing your first house. This was in 2019. I was living in Los Angeles at the time full time. Like, I had barely been to, I think I traveled to Arizona maybe 2 times prior to this, so I had absolutely no knowledge. I didn't even know where anything was in relativity to the airport, essentially. So I had no knowledge of real estate, because keep in mind, I wasn't doing real estate at the time, so I didn't know like how to even comp a property. I didn't know anything about Arizona at all geographically, so I went into this with very, very little knowledge, and I'm sure a lot of you guys that are looking for your house are the same way. So I want to let you guys know that I had no previous knowledge either. So I was 25 years old, and how I originally got into, well, first of all, I got a pre-qualification, which I highly suggest everyone that's looking to potentially purchase a house, get your pre-qualification first. Talk to your lender. That should be the first step before you even go and talk to a real estate agent, because you have to figure out what you can afford, if it's even possible for you to purchase a house, how much cash you need for a down payment, all that kind of stuff will get figured out before you even go house hunting. And then my friend at the time, he's still a good friend of mine actually, he does real estate out in he does real estate in the Palisades in California. He referred me to his same brokerage, but it was a branch out in Arizona. And basically how that happens, if you're like referring an agent, if you're an agent and you're referring a client to another agent out of state, generally you get like a part of their commission as a referral. So he referred me to someone at the same brokerage in exchange for, if I had to close with him, he'd get a referral fee on it. So I got in contact with this agent. We had decent conversation right off the bat. I was still in LA at the time. I hadn't met him face to face. It was all via phone call. And I was like, hey, I plan on, this is my situation, this is my pre-qualification. I sent it over to him. I plan on coming to Arizona 3 weeks from now on this specific weekend for 3 days. I'd love for you to set up appointments with the criteria that I sent you. He's like, sure, no problem. I'll get it all set up. Like, message me a couple days before you're here and we'll schedule out the whole weekend for you. So I was like, okay, cool. So I had texted him like a few times in between those couple weeks where our original phone call was and when I was actually going out there. And the communication just got worse and worse as time went on, and as it was closer and closer to me actually going out to Arizona. And keep in mind, I planned this entire trip. It wasn't for fun. I did have friends out here. I'm actually living with my business partner, who was my friend at the time. So I was coming out to like hang out with them, but my main purpose of this was to go look at properties and kind of get my feet wet and understand the market a little bit. But like, communication was horrible up until the day I got here. Even the day I got here, I was emailing him, texting him, giving him phone calls, no response. The only response I got was like midway through my trip. He's like, oh, so sorry, I got a listing for you tomorrow. So he scheduled one listing out for this entire weekend that I was here. Extremely frustrating. And the listing that he actually had set up for me was completely off any of my criteria that I had, just way out of my budget, completely wrong location, and just everything about it was, you could just tell he pieced it together. He literally spent 2 minutes on the MLS, pulled whatever listing was available, and then we went and drove to it. I had actually pulled up, or me and Ricky had went together because I flew here, so I didn't have my car. We had actually pulled up in his Nissan GTR, which is like a $75,000 car, and the moment that real estate agent saw us pull up in that car, it's such a funny story, his demeanor completely changed when he met Ricky and I. After that, I did that showing, I was completely over it. I was so freaking frustrated with this agent. But the next thing you know, I'm getting 5 emails from him like, oh, this property is this is what we're gonna get, like this is insane, like we're gonna go see this tomorrow. And he had 6 listings set up for me. And I'm like, listen man, I gave you an opportunity. I don't know like if you thought I wasn't a serious buyer or what the situation was, but I actually already found another agent. I appreciate it, and I cut my ties with him. So I actually haven't heard from this agent since then. We ended up seeing 1 property with him, and that was it. Looking back at that now, he most likely would have represented me on my second property, and they also would have represented me on my flip as well. But I'm also so grateful that I didn't go through with him, because I was able to meet Lenny, who actually happened to be and still is one of like my big a big part of my success in real estate. I'm actually on his team right now as a real estate agent, and he's been a big mentor through our flips as well. So my business partner Ricky put us in connection, Lenny and I in connection, the night before I was supposed to leave. So I had a flight 7 p.m. the next day, and he's like, here, we got 3 showings right now, right in the morning time. Let's go knock these out in the morning. And this is just kind of like, so you can kind of get an idea on what you're gonna get for your purchase price. We saw those 3 properties, and I ended up the second property that I saw with him was the property that we ended up putting an offer on, and the property that I got accepted. The other 2 properties, they would have been great flips, but at the time, like this is my first time that I'm buying a house, they needed like $20,000 to $30,000 of work into them. So I was looking for something more turnkey ready, because I already had to put 20% down, which was close to $45,000. On top of that, I didn't want to have to do $20,000 to $30,000 of renovations, and I had no idea. I didn't live in the state. I didn't want to have to like meet contractors and go back and forth. I had no connections whatsoever, so it was kind of unrealistic for me to get a property that needed a lot of work to it. Now I would 100% take it on. I would take that built-in equity or sweat equity into it, but at the given time, and me not living in the state, me not having any knowledge, and me not wanting to spend additional money on top of it, it just made more sense for me to look for a turnkey ready, and that happened to be the second property ever. Let's actually break down some numbers right here. So here we go. Let me make sure you guys can see everything. So I'm going to break down, this seems like a lot, but we're going to break it category by category. So this house was listed for, original list price was $225,000. We're going to round up to make it easier. And they actually had dropped down $10,000 the exact day that I went and saw the property, which actually worked for me, because the day they dropped it, I was the very first person to see the property on that $10,000 price drop, which gave me an advantage to it. And I knew we had to act fast, because a 10K price drop is actually quite a bit. Keep in mind, this is in 2019. We're not in a market like today where the moment it gets listed, you're having 15 offers, $40,000 over ask. This is a little bit of a different market. Although we were in an appreciating market, we weren't nearly at where we are right now. So yeah, it may seem weird that there was price drops, and this was on the market for 50 days before I even saw it. So I knew a lot of people had seen it, and that's obviously why they dropped the price, is because it was a little bit overpriced, I think. So they dropped it to $215,000 the same day that I went and saw it. I went and saw it in the morning, probably 10 a.m. My flight, like I said, was at 7 p.m. that night. So I didn't really know like what the plan was. I went home and I hung out with my friends that day, and I always had it on my mind. I was like, if I'm gonna put an offer on a property, it's gonna be this one. So I actually didn't text Lenny back until I was at the airport that night, and I was like, you know what, like let's just go for this. Like there's not gonna be a good time. Like I didn't feel like I was ready. But once you realize that like the first time you purchase a home is you're never going to feel like fully confident about it, at least from my perspective. But I was like, you know what, we got to take risks. Like in order to succeed, and step out of your comfort zone, you have to take those risks. So I was getting so many people, by the way, like when I was purchasing my house, I actually stopped telling people that I was looking, because so many people were like, you're going to lose money on it, the market's going to crash, like wait a bit, like wait like a little while longer. But there's never going to be a perfect time. There's so many of my clients that got cold feet last year, where they would have made $50,000, $60,000, $70,000 if they purchased last year when they were originally looking, but they got cold feet and they backed out. I guess my point for this is there's never really going to be an absolute perfect time to purchase a house. I say this over and over again, but if you're buying a house for a long-term play, like you waiting 6 to 12 months or trying to time the market is actually most likely going to make it in a worse situation, because you're going to keep waiting. And then when the market market starts to pull back, you're going to be like, oh, let me wait a little bit longer. Let me wait a little bit longer. And it's just a waiting game at that time, as opposed to just like, if you're ready to purchase a property and you have faith in your real estate agent or your own knowledge, then just go for it. So that's the kind of mindset I had, even though so many people were telling me not to. I'm glad that I stuck with it and believed in myself, essentially. So our original offer, I didn't know anything about this. So I was like, hey, they have it listed at $215. If I can get it under $210, it sounds like a good deal to me. I had no idea of what comps were. I kind of had a general idea on what I can get for rent. My rent, this was a student rental, by the way, across the street from a big university. So I was like, if I'm a college student and I live 30 seconds across the campus, I would most likely easily pay $450 a month. So that's how I came up with my comp at the time. I was like, $450 times 4 bedrooms is $1,800 a month. If my mortgage is going to be less than $1,000, that sounds good to me. So that's kind of how I ran my numbers. And then Lenny actually came up with the exact offer. So I honestly completely forgot where I was. I just had to talk to my contractor. The Goodyear house is looking really, really good. That was the guy for the bathroom renovations. We have about 4 days left and we're going to list it. Super excited. Anyways, the purchase price, I think this is where we left off. $208,000 is what Lenny came up with. And the cool thing about this is he added in seller concessions, meaning the seller will give me, the buyer, credit towards my closing costs up to $5,000. If closing costs are like $4,000, then they're not going to give me $5,000. So it's just basically to cover closing costs, but my closing costs were well above $5,000, so that's totally fine. So essentially, if I were to just like take that $5,000 off the purchase price, this offer is essentially $203,000. Seller concessions and stuff are for when people need like more money to help them close a property. Instead of adding it into or taking it off the purchase price, they'll just give you like seller credit or buyer credit, so you don't have to come out of pocket as much. They countered. So this offer originally right here was before I took off for Arizona. And then when I landed in LAX that night, they actually already had a counter sent back to me. So right when I got off the flight, I had an email. They countered at $209,900, and then they took off $1,500 from seller concessions, making it $3,500. So essentially their counter was $206,400, which was $3,400 more than what the original offer was. And I was like, you know what? Let's just go for it. I didn't really have anything to like base it off of. It was under my $210 price, which I was excited about. So this is the offer right here, is actually what we ended up settling on. $209,900, $3,500 concessions, basically making it $206,400. The appraisal actually came in at $212,000. So it was always nice to have that extra $5,000, $5,600 of cushion of built-in equity into the property. It doesn't really matter too much. The appraisal is just to make sure that you have a good, or you'll be able to get a loan on the property. So now talking about some of the financing on this property. My down payment was $41,980. My closing costs were $10,100. This is why I tell you guys to shop lenders. I got absolutely screwed with my lender. I only went with one guy. I didn't shop around, and I bought down my points, which was extremely stupid at the time. I spent so much money buying down my points to a lower interest rate when I just went and refinanced 3 months ago for a much lower rate. So I basically put all this money down and I refinanced a year and a half later. So it was just like literally a waste of money. When you talk about like spending money, that was a complete waste. But that's all, it's like all a learning experience. So it also helps to have like someone that's going to guide you along the entire process. I wish I had someone to kind of help me with that. I had no idea what any of that meant. The most confusing things for me from a first-time home buyer was just like all the lending stuff and all the financing stuff on the closing documents. That's what got me the most confused. So if you guys can like educate yourself on the closing statements, that'll help you guys the most. So basically my cash to close is my closing costs plus my down payment minus the seller concessions equaled $46,485. That's the amount that I had to bring to close. I also paid some miscellaneous things because it's an older house. I paid for a sewer scope. You have to pay for the third-party appraiser outside of your closing costs, which was $500. I paid for an inspection, which was $400, and then repairs and rent prep. Basically, what I needed to get this rent ready. It was pretty much turnkey. The only thing I had to do was buy a fridge and buy a washer and dryer, which was basically $2,000. So to get this property, from my down payment all the way to getting it rented out, was just under $50,000 at $49,735. That's how much I spent. We also requested some Binzer or some inspection repairs. We did request some items on there. This is why you guys get final walkthroughs as well. When you guys request repairs, sometimes it's sufficient enough if you're fine with them sending receipts or sending pictures of the repairs, but of the final walkthroughs to basically make sure that they did everything that they were supposed to do on the contract. And we actually didn't walk through this property. I was driving in from LA that same exact day, and I wasn't in Arizona, so I didn't do a final walkthrough. So now, kind of just for fun, that's pretty much the sum up the whole video, but I found some old pictures on the MLS, and this like blew my mind, guys. This, in 2011, this property sold, my property sold for $27,000. Mind-blowing. Yes, it was a foreclosure. Yes, it wasn't in the best shape. You guys can see right here. Pretty beaten up for sure. All the windows were boarded up. Not the nicest area, but for me to think a house goes for $27,000 just blows me away. No matter, like, even in the last 30 years, that's just so low for me. That's cheaper than most cars nowadays. So someone got a smoking deal on it. I'll explain it a little bit later, actually, as I show you guys more pictures. This is what it looked like. When you guys see more updated pictures, you guys will see that this wall was actually blown out. This whole entire doorway was actually drywalled off, and I'll show you what they did to it. But the person that bought this property for $27K, they actually flipped it 6 months later, and they sold it for $65,000. They didn't do a whole lot of work to it. I think they just painted the outside and they drywalled that one door off. So they didn't make a whole lot of money on that property, to be honest with you. If they bought it for $27 and sold it for $65 after closing costs, I can't imagine them making more than $10K on that property, but even the buyer property for $65K is just mind-blowing still. So here's what the current status of my property looks like. I didn't do any renovations myself. This was from previous people, but here's what I'm trying to explain right here. So let me pull up. So now you guys can kind of see side by side. This right here, they drywalled this whole thing off, and they just kind of closed it off, and this is where they put the microwave, the cabinets, and the stove. So it's actually really cool to see like old listing photos, and I think they might have honestly put a window right here as well. I can't really tell if there's already a window there. It's kind of really cool to see how they transformed the property. And then this was where that previous wall was, so they blew out that wall and opened up the kitchen a little bit. So here is the rest of the property. Let's go through it really quickly. Yeah, this is the current condition that it's in. This was also, this was where that old laundry room, that doorway that went through the kitchen, this is where it should have been, right here, but they actually made it into a separate bathroom and separate bedroom. The return on your investment for doing that is insane, because it created a whole nother bedroom and a whole nother bathroom. And yes, you lost your laundry room. Keep in mind, at the time, this is a 1950s build, so a lot of these builds didn't have garages, and they didn't have washer and dryer rooms at all, or hookups. My current washer and dryer in this property is kind of in a pantry in the kitchen, but that's just how you got to make it work with these old homes, unless you do an addition onto it. So thank you guys so much for watching this video. Hopefully this was able to help you guys out. If you guys are looking in the Arizona area to buy or invest or sell your property, I am a licensed real estate agent. My email is down below. And that's pretty much it. Follow me on Instagram. Follow me on TikTok if you guys want to see some of my TikToks. I've been posting on there as well, so all that information is down below. Thank you guys so much, and I'll see you soon.